All right. Welcome. So good to see you all hanging out with us today. Welcome to another Agency Breakthrough Masterclass. So over the next hour, we're going to be teaching you about how to get more leads for your digital agency. So just click the go live button and just want to welcome everybody to the next hour on this very special webinar for Cloudways. We're gonna be talking about how to get more leads for your digital agency. So this is the third session in this Agency Breakthrough Masterclass series. The first session we talked about what marketing engines, what lead engines are for your business, how to build them, why they're important, how they work, and what some effective engines are for your digital agency. The last session that we did, the second session, was a live agency hot seat session. We had two agency owners hanging out with us. We mapped out their engines live, and we talked about how to improve those engines by breaking them down between, what's fueling these engines, what's actually building the awareness in the market, what's driving to some kind of action, and what kind of appointments we're actually getting from our engines. Because when you're thinking about your digital agency, when it comes to marketing, really the most important thing is driving more appointments. We love to see appointments show up on our calendars with ideal prospects. So that's what this is all about. In today's session, we're going to be talking about scaling and automating our engines. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. So we're hanging out with you guys today on the Cloudways platform. Cloudways has been such an amazing company to help us to create more valuable content for digital agencies. So I just want to give them thanks before we go into our session today. If you want to ask questions during today's webinar, let us know in the comments. I'll do my best to follow along and answer any questions as we go through today live. So really excited to be hanging out with you all today. And we're going to be talking about how to get more leads. All right. We ready? Ready to dig in? All right, let's do it. So if you don't know who I am, that guy right there, my name is Brent Weaver. I work with digital agency owners that are struggling to attract and win high value, high paying clients. I'm the CEO and founder of You Gurus. We are a business coaching and training school for digital agency owners. We've been doing that since 2012. Before that, I ran a digital agency called Hot Press Web. We had over 300 clients under active management. I pitched over 1,000 website projects and proposals. So when I went into my proposals folder, there was over 1,000 projects in that folder. And so what I'm going to be teaching you today is pulled from that experience and also pulled from the experience of over the last 10 years, I've generated thousands and thousands of leads for my business. We talk to about between 1,000 and 2,000 digital agency owners every single year through our free strategy calls. And so some of the stuff that I'm going to be teaching you today is what I've learned over 20 years of entrepreneurship, over 20 years of figuring out how to market effectively for my businesses, generating millions of dollars in revenue for those companies. But more importantly, I'm going to be teaching the stuff that I've also helped thousands of agency owners implement for their businesses. So this stuff doesn't just work for me. This is stuff that we've been able to implement and help so many folks just like you. So make sure you stick with us today because we're going to have some fun. Our topic today is on how to scale and automate your lead engine. Scaling and automating your lead engine. So if you've been hanging out with us, if you've been working with us through this masterclass, you've already understood what a marketing and lead engine is. You've understood how to build one. You've understood that it's not about the individual channel necessarily, but it's about building a system where you can invest money, time, energy, resources. And on the other end of that system, you're getting scheduled appointments on your calendar or your salesperson's calendar with qualified prospects that know you, that like you, that trust you, that want to do business with you. That's what this is all about. But today, we're going to take that topic a little further, okay? We're going to be talking specifically about how to scale these engines and how to automate them. So there's a little bit of an assumption today that you already have some kind of marketing engine. You've done something that's generated a qualified prospect appointment on your calendar. And the magic of scaling your lead engines is that instead of you going out there and building 10 more marketing tactics, is we want to actually help you to get better results out of fewer moving parts in your business. And so today we're going to be going through what that takes, specifically how to do that, the step-by-step approach to taking a marketing and lead engine that's working for your digital agency and actually seeing that engine grow. And more importantly, removing you out of it as much as possible. Because I don't know about you, but I love being off doing something, whether it's meeting with clients, whether it's working with my team, or better yet, I'm off on a bike ride or hanging out with my family and I'm getting leads. And there are systems that are working in the background that are generating leads. So we want to be able to create systems and processes for you to scale and automate your lead engine. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to be walking you through that step by step. What's fun about this too is I'm going to be walking you through some specific examples of how we're actually scaling our engines. I'm going to be showing you some behind the scenes numbers on how this all works. So why does scaling our lead engines matter, right? So I want you to think about this question for yourself. What is really important for you when it comes to scaling your lead engine and getting more leads for your digital agency? And I want to start this off by talking about two different agency owners. And for sake of privacy, I've kind of provided a different name for these people, right? But our first agency owner, his name is Tom. And Tom has the bright idea to run a webinar to generate leads for his business. And you might find yourself in a similar situation as Tom. You've heard people that have gotten results from webinars. And so Tom decides to create some content, go out there and run a webinar. And he's really excited because it's his first webinar. He goes out there, he does a webinar, and guess what? Tom gets a couple of leads, a couple of appointments from his webinar. So, virtual high five for Tom. He's gotten some leads. He went out and did some marketing, and maybe you're somebody who's been out there and you've done some marketing through a webinar, and maybe it helped you get a couple of leads. Our other agency owner, her name is Samantha. And Samantha, much like Tom, had a really good idea one day. She saw people out there doing webinars, and she decided, hey, I'm going to go do a webinar, just like Tom, right? My friend Tom did a webinar. It looked like it was successful. I'm going to go do this webinar, right? So Samantha goes out there, kind of looks at what other people are doing for webinars, and she decides to run a webinar too. And guess what? Samantha's webinar was also successful. She got a couple of appointments booked on her calendar, right? And so virtual high five for Samantha. She did a great job with her webinar. Now, our stories seem like they're relatively similar at this point. Tom's run a webinar, he's gotten some leads. Samantha's run a webinar, she's gotten some leads, and we're really excited about the success of both Tom and Samantha. Well, some time passes and, Tom decides after his webinar that he's feeling pretty good about doing a webinar. So Tom goes and says, I'm going to go create a whole new webinar. And maybe I'm going to create 10 more topics, and I'm going to go out there, and because I was successful with webinars, I'm also probably going to be pretty awesome at social media. So Tom decides to sign up for Instagram. He decides to dust off that Facebook fan page, and he starts taking the same content that he ran with his successful webinar, and he goes out there and he starts creating the same content on a bunch of different channels. He says to himself, you know what? My blog has even, it's a little outdated. So I'm going to take that content. I'm going to run it on my blog. I'm going to start blogging every morning, right? Man, this marketing stuff, I love it, right? And what happens is Tom gets really excited about marketing. He goes out there and starts investing in all these different channels. He's spending a huge amount of his time across a lot of different areas of the marketing ecosystem, right? He signs up for like 5 new cool tools. He's got Active Campaign. He's got MailChimp. He doesn't even know why, but he bought Infusionsoft too. And Tom is just pumped about marketing. And he starts getting a couple of more leads, but he also starts getting insanely busy and a little bit on the burned out side. Samantha, on the other hand, says, hey, I did this webinar. It was really successful. And maybe I should just do that same webinar again. And instead of this time, I'm going to try to get a couple of other people to promote the webinar for me. So same webinar, same content, I'm going to reach out to a couple people and I'm going to run the exact same thing next month. And guess what? Samantha gets some more leads. It kind of feels boring to some extent, right? She's kind of just doing the same thing, but she did find a couple more people that were willing to invite and promote her webinar. And another month goes by and Samantha runs yet another webinar. It's the same webinar, but she finds a couple more people to promote, and she even tries to run some ads to that exact same webinar. So not super rocket science. She's not reinventing the wheel. She's just running the same old webinar yet again for her business. But it's weird. It's not crazy exciting, but every time she runs a webinar, she gets, 2 to 5 leads. And on the last webinar, she even got a little bit more. She got close to 10 leads for her webinar. All right, let's fast forward 6 months. 6 months later, Tom's burned out. While he did get some clients with some of his initial marketing efforts, he started having so many channels to keep track of and manage that it really became onerous. And he started losing track of whether any of those channels were working. And actually, his first webinar that he did run a couple of other webinars with different topics, but he didn't really find any other new places to promote his webinars. And he started to get less and less results from those webinars. His first topic was kind of a big hit, but his other topics kind of fell flat. His blog became too much to manage. His social media channels weren't really giving him any ROI. He felt like he was creating all this really cool content. He was getting lots of likes and love, but he wasn't actually getting any leads for his business. And after those initial projects kind of wore off, Tom didn't have any new leads in his pipeline, and he just looked at the marketing thing and was like, screw it, I'm gonna focus on referrals and word of mouth again. On the other hand, Samantha just kept running her webinars, kept coming up with new ideas of how to promote that same old webinar. Not only that, but she started delegating some of those tasks of setting up the webinar to other people in her business. She hired an ad specialist whose single job was to create great advertisements to promote her webinar to ever new audiences. She even hired a marketing manager who created innovative and new ways to talk about her webinar with her email list. And really all Samantha did was once or twice a month, show up for her webinar. Her team made sure there was plenty of new people to come to that webinar, and she continued to run that webinar time and time again, getting tons and tons of leads and consistency. Every webinar she ran, she got a few more leads for her business than the last webinar she ran, and she's basically booking 20 to 30 new leads every single month from one simple marketing engine. All right, so we've talked about 2 stories. We've talked about Tom. We've talked about Samantha. We've talked about Tom. We've talked about Samantha. Now, I don't know. Maybe I'm telling this story with a little bit of bias, but this story is actually 2 versions of myself. For many, many years, I burned myself out trying to chase so many different marketing tactics. And the reality is I was not getting the results that I wanted in my business. So here's what I did. I got rid of all that stuff. I found one tactic, one engine that worked, and I just ran it like a system. And I tried to scale it and find the ceiling. And so today we're going to talk about the specific things that I did and you can do with any type of marketing engine in your business to create more results with fewer inputs. And that I think is a really exciting idea. I'd love to see your story be more like Samantha and a lot less like Tom, where we're burned out on marketing. We feel like we're spread thin, versus getting lots of results and maybe spending a couple of hours a week or a couple of hours a month on our marketing engines. So what's the problem? If we were to zero in on kind of the problem with this, the first problem is that marketing is time consuming. And if you've got a lot of things going on in your life, oftentimes marketing is the last thing that you're going to focus on. You know, kind of like if you go outside today on a sunny day and you're like, man, I really wish there was some shade in my backyard, right? When you have that realization, it's usually too late to plant the tree. You need to be planting the tree many years before you want the shade. Just like with marketing, we need to be making those marketing investments consistently before we need the leads. If you're really busy with your agency today is the time that you need to be investing in marketing. Not a ton of different tactics, but one simple engine to help you grow your business so that when you need leads, they're there for you and waiting. Another thing that comes up is that it's only you. You're the gatekeeper for your entire marketing system. And a lot of this comes down to the fact that people are investing in way too many different tactics for their marketing engines. So by simplifying things, we can actually start to delegate some of those tasks to other people because we're not constantly reinventing things. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Another big problem that I hear from people is that they're spread way too thin. You already have a lot of client obligations. You might be the chief salesperson for your business. You also might be the chief invoicer, the chief web designer, the chief marketer, right? You're spread way too thin. And that leads to overwhelm, and overwhelm leads to bottlenecks, and bottlenecks lead to you freezing up and just saying, you know what? Screw it, I'm not going to focus on marketing for my business. Maybe I'm fine with where my business is at today. Well, I think there is a huge opportunity for you when it comes to scaling your lead engines. One is, let's build a lead engine that just runs on autopilot. Okay. At UGurus, we have about 2, sometimes 3 lead engines. I'm involved in one of them. The rest of them just kind of run in the background, and we generate anywhere from 30 to 60 qualified appointments every single month. We add almost 2,000 emails to our email list every single month. And honestly, I probably spend 1 to 2 hours a week running my marketing engines. Another thing that we want to make sure that we have for our marketing engines is right person, right seat. While you are a genius at probably your content and subject matter expert, it doesn't take a genius to push some buttons in a web tool. It doesn't take a genius to hand off work from one person to another. And so we want to make sure that as you look at your marketing engines, you start to pull back the layers of the onion and get really clear on which part of the onion is your unique genius. And let's get other people to take over those things and make sure that they're all rowing in the same direction. Instead of having a team that's all off doing different tactics and different things, what I've found works way better is that you as a team are working together on one system and you're all rowing in the same direction and you're growing that system. We also want to see you get more results over time. So if you're adding channels constantly to your business in terms of how you market, what ends up happening is you're an inch deep, a mile wide, and you're not actually finding a lot of success. If you're going to specialize, if you're going to get real results, you need to specialize. And specialize means you need to choose fewer channels, maybe even only 1 or 2 channels to get leads, and you need to work on scaling and growing those channels. Figure out how people are getting leads in those channels and really invest time and effort into those channels. If you're mirroring your business against other businesses out there in the marketplace that maybe are more successful than you, they might have resources to manage 3 or 4 or 5 channels effectively. Or maybe they're not even getting that good of results on those channels. It's always hard to tell. And here's one of the things we want for you ultimately is we want you to be doing fewer things, but making them better, right? We want you to be on fewer channels, fewer marketing investments, but we want those marketing investments in channels to be better ultimately. So we're going to talk about 5 key principles as we go through today's session. I've got some workbooks that we're going to walk through, some case studies, and my goal today is to teach you exactly how you can take a lead engine that you have currently for your business and scale that engine. So we're going to walk through 5 key principles over the next half hour or so about how to grow and scale your lead engine. And I'm going to leave you with a really easy blueprint, kind of 9 critical steps to growing and scaling your lead engines. Number 1. We ready for this? And this is a great time to grab that paper and pen, and we're going to write this stuff down. So the first thing that we're going to work on here is we're going to working on first proving our engines, then scaling our engines. Okay. And this is important because think of it like, you've got this huge, set of dominoes, right? And the proving stage is kind of setting up all of your dominoes, right? You've got to set the dominoes up first, and then you get to push them and see this whole engine kind of work itself, right? So there's 2 critical steps in like stacking up your dominoes. The first is kind of designing it out, laying it all out, making sure things are in the right place. The second step is going to be to actually push those through. The same thing works when we're thinking about our lead engines. If you have an engine that's not proven, like let's say you're on social media and you're posting, valuable content to your Facebook page, and you actually aren't getting any leads from that. Well, posting more often, or putting more energy into your posts, or doing lots of things to try to get to grow that channel. If you're not able to get leads from that channel, then trying to scale that channel might not be the best thing. Or if you're currently, posting on social media and it's you that's doing the posting and it's taking up too much time, but you're not getting any leads and you delegate that to somebody. Well, the problem is we're delegating a system that we don't even know that works yet. So we're asking somebody to do something, but we haven't even proven it ourselves. And if you're not able to get this to work, yes, you can bring in some consultants to help you, but actually asking a lower level team member or an outsourced contractor or a VA to go out there and post for you 3 times a week, chances are they're not going to get any better results than you. More likely they're going to get worse results. So we need to prove our engines first, really figure out what it takes to get those leads. And then once we're able to do that, then we think about the scale conversation. So what I want to walk you through is kind of this idea of proving versus scaling first, just so you understand it. Okay. When you're in the proving stage of a lead engine, let's take your email list, for example. Let's say you have 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 people on your email list, and you want to generate appointments from your email list. Well, if you've never done that before, then you need to develop a strategy. And your strategy for email might be, how many times a month are you going to send to your email list? It might be thinking about what kind of content are you going to send to your email list? What does your call to action look like? And if you don't actually have something that works, you're probably going to create a strategy. And I want you to think about your business like a lab. You're essentially going to be running some experiments. It's going to feel like a lot of trial and error. We're going to be building systems, and some of these systems might not actually work. And so we need to be willing to get rid of them. And ultimately what we're looking for in the proving stage is proof. I have an email list. Can I generate an appointment from this email list? When we're in the scaling stage, it means we've already generated an appointment from our email list and we've done some stuff, right? We've done maybe some stuff that didn't work. We've done some other stuff that we think actually played a part in getting a lead. Well, that's a great time for you to start to think about scaling your engine. And sometimes scaling just means you stepping out of the engine. You're no longer the one that's doing all the work. You can delegate that to somebody else. Maybe you can create some automation, like an email series that basically fires on some predetermined time and tempo, or maybe it means having somebody else manage this for you in your business, or maybe it means growing your email list and investing in ads to add more people to the email list. So when we're in scaling stage, it actually is less about experimentation. We're thinking about our lead engines more as a factory, like having an assembly line within our marketing department for our business. And instead of thinking about experiments, instead we're thinking about systematizing. We're no longer thinking of things in trial and error. It's like, hey, when we send this kind of email and then this kind of email and then this kind of email, we get an appointment. And if we can prove that and repeat that, then what we should do is we should systematize that. We should turn it into a clear step-by-step process. We should create SOPs, and we should put somebody in charge of managing that. And one of the things that I see people fall down so hard on is that you as an agency owner, you're probably out there doing marketing for your clients. Maybe you're out there, getting these same results for your clients, and you're a great innovator. You're a great strategist, right? And when it comes time to it, you can write great emails to your list. The problem, of course, is you're busy. And so you go off and you get some clients, you're busy doing work, and the first thing that goes is your marketing. So instead of keeping consistent on your emails, you kind of fall down, you kind of forget about it, or maybe it's a webinar. You're really good at webinars, but you haven't done one in 6 months, right? Oh, every time I do one, I get leads, but now I'm not actually doing one. And so what we want to do is instead of innovating marketing, instead of innovating in building stuff, we are managing it. And a lot of times the types of people that manage things well are very different than the types of people that build and innovate. A lot of entrepreneurs are quick start individuals. We love coming up with ideas. We love going out there and proving everybody wrong. But when we have to, week in, week out, send one email to our list every single week, 52 weeks a year, for the next 5 years, that's a really daunting task. Just like posting to social media a couple times a week, just like it is, creating one video or consistently checking your ads every day or running 1 or 2 webinars every single month. Building the webinar is innovation. It's proving that you can do something. Scaling a webinar has nothing to do with building more webinars. It has everything to do with managing the webinar you have and working it as a system. And finally, this idea of doubling. And we're going to talk about this later, but basically any marketing engine that you have that's working, what we want to do is we want to start to think about the double mindset. We're no longer trying to prove the engine, we're trying to grow it. Okay. And we're going to talk about 2X levers later on today. If you have a lead engine that's not working, if you're doing something like going into LinkedIn every day and posting on LinkedIn or whatever, and you're not getting leads, you're not getting appointments, turning up the volume is not going to help you. Turning up the volume is not going to help you. If you have something that's not working for your business and all of a sudden you put a ton of more resources into it, like you hire a VA to take over all the minutia from you, you hire, you start paying for traffic to a webinar, right? Like if we take a webinar that you created and we promote that to your network, right? Your past clients, your past prospects, basically your hot list. If we promote all those people that know, like, and trust you, that already love you, and you're not able to convert any of those people to an appointment on your calendar, if we go out there and we pay for traffic to that webinar and we really turn up the volume, like it's not going to make the situation better. If anything, it's going to make it worse. It's just like hearing a bad song on the radio, turning up the volume does not make it a better song. Instead, what I want you to think about is, I want you to be the DJ of your marketing engine party. I want you to think about the timing, the tempo, the vibe of the crowd, and we want to find that song, right? Like when the DJ hears that, and when they're playing that new track, and they're not sure if it's going to vibe, right? But they see that people start dancing and moving, right? They know, hey, people are moving to the dance floor. It's happening. I can go ahead and turn up this song, right? We're going to turn this up and we're going to really put some beats behind this, right? So I want you to think about your marketing engines just like a DJ thinks about the room. We want to time and tempo and control the volume of our marketing engines based on the results. What's actually happening in the room? How are people responding to this? So that first takeaway here today, the first principle, we want to prove then scale. That's so important. We don't want to be scaling and delegating engines that don't actually work for our business. The second thing that we want to do is we want to elevate our workload. Okay. Think about this like when you've got an engine that works, it's kind of like going on a trip. Like if you're going to go on vacation for a couple of weeks, right? One of the things you're going to do is obviously you're going to pack a suitcase, but you're going to sit down and you're going to make a list. You're going to make a list of all the things you might need on your trip, and you're going to get really clear on that. And you're going to sit down and you're going to pack. You're going to make sure, hey, when I'm going on this big trip, I'm going to be gone for a month, right? What are the things that I'm going to need? What's going to happen to me along the way? And we're going to make sure that we get a really detailed list of that along the way. So let me walk you through, we've given webinars as an example today of what it looks like to elevate our workflow for a webinar, right? So let's say you're out there and you do a webinar. Now there's a lot of steps that are involved in a webinar. So this is a webinar funnel. This is kind of how things work from a step-by-step standpoint, right? We've got our topic ideas. We're going to add things to a schedule. We're going to create a webinar deck. We're going to write a landing page of some kind. We're going to set up some registration pages. We're going to update any integrations that have to happen if you're using a tool like Zoom or Webinar Jam. We're going to write some emails to promote to our list. We're going to write some social media posts to promote our webinar as well. We're going to write some ads. We're going to schedule emails. We're going to schedule our social. We're going to publish those ads. We're going to do some partner outreach. Then we're going to actually, deliver the webinar. And once we've delivered the webinar, we're probably going to update our scorecard, right? So we've got these things that we do. So if you've ever delivered a webinar, and chances are you probably did a lot of this stuff on your own. This was probably a lot of your responsibility. So one of the first steps to really figuring out, like once you have a proven engine and you know that, hey, I went and delivered a webinar and I got leads, the next step is to sit down and unpack, right? Unpack and create that list of everything that you did that led to that result or that outcome. You're going to unpack and list out everything that you did to get you to that outcome. Now, once you do that, there's this box over here. And again, you could do this on a piece of paper or worksheet of your own, but we would write who's responsible. And if it was the first time we ever did our webinar, right? Let's say I was the one that did that. Let's say all in, maybe I spent over the course of the entire system, right? The time or money, maybe I spent somewhere between, 8 to 10 hours creating content, creating my very first landing page, creating the emails that I was going to send out, right? It was a 10-hour investment. And let's say I ended up getting, 3 to 5 appointments. So basically, probably about 2 hours of invested energy to every one appointment that I got from a qualified lead, right? So great result on the webinar, but here's the deal. That's a lot of investment. If I'm going to do a webinar every month and spend 10 hours a month on my webinar, I don't know if I'm going to be able to sustain something like that. So step 1 is to elevate our workload, get clear on exactly what's happening when we're actually delivering the webinar. Now, the second step of this we'll talk about here in a second, but I just want to be super clear that once we've proven a marketing engine, then we're going to focus on scaling it. The first step, once you have a proven engine, is to elevate our workload, to really look at everything that we're doing, break it down step by step, make sure that we fully understand what we're going to be working on in this engine. Now, once we've done that, the third key principle is automate what you can, delegate the rest. Automate what you can, delegate the rest. Now, if you're not familiar with what I mean by automation, it can be tool-based automation. So when I say tool-based automation, what I'm talking about here are, some tools like Zapier, Infusionsoft, ActiveCampaign, if this, then that. Google Suite has all sorts of cool little automations. Automations can be anything that a piece of software is just doing for you, is just taking care of. It could be as simple as automatically forwarding an email from your inbox to somebody else. Let me give you an example of that. When somebody schedules with me on my podcast, Calendly sends me an email to my inbox. Hey, somebody, Ryan Dice just scheduled on your podcast, right? It takes that email from my inbox and it simply forwards that email to my marketing manager, who already has from the form submitted by the guest, has their headshot, has their bio, has the topic that they're going to talk about, and they can take that email forwarded to them automatically, and they can get to work on promotional material for that podcast immediately. Now, I haven't had to do anything, right? They've scheduled the webinar onto my calendar, or not the webinar, the podcast onto my calendar, and automatically that email goes off to somebody else. That automation happens literally right within Gmail. There's no fancy tools needed for that. Now, once I finish my podcast, and I actually go record my podcast, and our podcast at UGurus is one of our marketing engines, one of our nurture engines. But when I record a podcast, for example, I drag and drop the audio file when I'm done into a Google Drive folder. And what's really cool about this is I realized that every time I used to record a podcast episode, it would take me 5 to 10 minutes to upload the audio file. I'd sit there and wait for the audio file to upload. When the audio file was done, I'd then create an email. I'd go into Google Drive. I would copy the folders. I would say, hey guys, I've uploaded a new podcast that needs to be edited. And I basically have this email that I would write. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, right? But it was like 10 minutes. And here's the deal. I publish a podcast once a week. So 10 minutes, on average, and it's a very minutia type task, right? 10 minutes a week adds up to, 520 minutes per year. That's a lot of time. Like, I don't know about you, but I can do a lot in 520 minutes of time. That's practically 10 hours a year that I was spending writing this ridiculously simple email and waiting for files to upload, right? So all I did was I created a little automation that happens between Google Drive and Zapier. And whenever I upload a new audio file to a very specific folder, it automatically generates this email. Now, it took me about 30 minutes to set up this automation. I've been running it for the last 2 years. So literally this automation by itself has helped save me almost 1,000 minutes by just automating a simple handoff workflow from one thing to another, right? So once we've elevated our workflow and we really look at all the detailed steps that are associated with every single thing that we do, what we can do is we can start to create these little automations. These are workflow automations. There's all sorts of other automations that you can create with things like Infusionsoft and ActiveCampaign. You can create these super fancy email series. If you know, hey, if I send these 10 emails to new leads that are coming onto my list, I know I'm going to get a strategy call application. I know that somebody, 1 out of 100 people is going to book that appointment. And so if you know that you have a converting email series that works, lock that thing into a system like Infusionsoft, build your dashboard to track it, and then the goal should be to grow the email list and add as many people to that email list as humanly possible. Pay for traffic, figure out all your numbers, and scale that thing because you've got a system that works. Now, what most people do is they create an email series in Infusionsoft, and it gets them a lead every 100 email addresses, but they never create a list growth strategy because they never realize that new email, new email onboarding system, they don't look at it as a marketing engine. So you want to look at all these different things, leverage those automations to take over the heavy lifting for you, and then work on scaling those engines. So there's a lot of cool automation tools out there. You guys are probably super savvy tech people that are listening to this, and you probably know 50 other things you can automate than I do. But here's the deal. When we find these things that work for our business, just break down those things with that Elevate Your Workflow step by step. And look at all of those time investments, those micro investments, because marketing is a game where you got to come in and you got to sweep the floor every day, right? Every day the dust comes back, every day we must sweep. And so if you're doing something that requires a little bit of your time 5 days a week, that adds up to an incredible amount of time. Here's another sample workflow. This is called the Video Pulse Engine. This is a workflow that we teach folks in our community over at You Gurus, but basically it works like this. You've got some amazing content in your brain, and it's a lot faster to record a video about stuff than it is to sit down and try to write a blog post. I can record a 5 to 10 minute video with as much content and value, typically as it takes me to write a 1,000-word blog post that might take me 2 to 4 hours to write that. Now, look, there are advantages to sitting down and writing a blog post from scratch, but the reality is if I got to publish a blog post each and every week, that sometimes I'm not going to be able to be that consistent. So instead I create a video, I drag and drop that video over into a folder. From that folder, it automatically sends an email to my marketing team. They create a landing page for that video. They create a Facebook post. They take that Facebook post, they convert it into an advertisement. They take that advertisement, they convert that into an email, into a blog post. We post that to our free Facebook group. We post it to our Instagram post. We post it as a reel. We basically repurpose it like crazy. And so it seems like to everybody else that we're everywhere all the time. But in reality, I'm nowhere. Like I literally am creating a 5-minute video. I'm sending that off through this system, right? And there's some really fancy ways that we can look at doing this stuff. I'll show you some, maybe, there we go. I'll show you some back of the house kind of, SOPs and workflows here. So we've got our Video Pulse engine as a sample, right? I've got a tactical overview for my team, how this system works. We've got all our accounts we need to have set up. We've got to have somebody to edit the video. We've got to have somebody to distribute the video. We've got to look at the reporting and log that kind of stuff. We've got to optimize this, right? We've got a toolbox. We've got a list of assets for every single video. So I've got my upload folder, my sample video, a landing page, a sample email, a Facebook post. So for example, I can show you this here. If I go and pull up this landing page, right? How to create a higher value business by creating $10,000 per hour activities. So all I did was create this video. My team created this landing page. My team created this, this email that went out to our list. And my team also created a Facebook post that goes out to our free Facebook community that's actually turned into an ad. So what are $10,000 per hour tasks? I had no part in actually writing this Facebook post. I had no part in writing this email. I had no part in creating this landing page. Right below this, you can see here, we can apply for a free strategy call. Okay, so that's the power of automation. So if I go back to this, diagram here, this is the power of you having a proven engine. Now, I know that me producing this video and distributing on our social media channels and distributing on email, it gets leads. Like it's not an experiment for me. I know that the biggest challenge for me is consistency. So I have to remove myself from everything except for the thing that is uniquely me, which is sitting down and creating that 5-minute video and dragging that video over to my folder. And literally sometimes I get so busy that it's even hard to drag that video into a folder. Like I'll record the video and then I'll just run off and go, my kids are slamming on the doors and I forget to drag and drop the video to the folder. And so I even recently was looking at like in Ecamm, you can automatically set your videos to upload to a folder. And then what I did was I told one of my team members, hey, here's how to look through my videos. videos and to identify, what a good video is versus what's a throwaway video or a video that we shouldn't pay attention to, right? Because even dragging and dropping the folder, I could potentially forget. If I've got to create, 2 videos a week, that's 104 videos per year. And if I forget to upload it 10% of the time, then that affects our entire marketing engine. So that's an example workflow when we start to get really clear on this idea of automate what you can, then delegate the rest. Let's talk about delegation for a quick second. So back to our Elevate the Workload worksheet, okay? So once you have an engine, like my webinar engine, for example, I'm investing 8 to 10 hours a week on this thing, or 8 to 10 hours per webinar. If I wanted to run weekly webinars in 2020, which is a crazy year. I ran webinars almost every week. I think we did something like 32 webinars in 2020. I cannot spend 10 hours a week on my webinar. I just can't. I can spend about an hour a week on my webinar, or an hour per webinar, right? So topic ideas. First and foremost, kind of like our example with Samantha at the beginning, what I realized early on was it was not that important to run new webinars, because if I have a list of 1,000 people, and I get 40 of them to register and show up for my webinar, that means I've got 960 people that have not seen that first webinar that I did. Now, I could make the assumption that they didn't do that because they're not interested in it, but I guarantee you, if they're on your email list, they're probably interested in almost anything that you have to say. The issue is that they didn't have time. They didn't see the email. They opened the email, but they got busy with something. They, clicked on the landing page, but they didn't register because they got busy with something. Like, I finally realized that the topic was less important because there's a million other people doing webinars out there. It was just important for me to run my webinar, right? So instead of coming up with new topic ideas, I just got rid of that idea. I have a couple webinars that I run. I've had one webinar that I run. I probably run close to 100 times. So add to a schedule, right? Like, do I really need to be the one that schedules? What I did was I said, you know what? I'm going to stop adding this to a schedule. I'm going to ask my marketing manager to basically come in, and I'm going to give them some rules. Hey, I like to do webinars on Thursdays. I don't like to do webinars 2 weeks in a row. I like to make sure I have buffers before and afters, right? So I created an SOP for adding things to my schedule, right? So that ended up being something that I went to somebody else. The other thing that I did was, one of the things I can encourage you to do is eliminate, right? We talked about that with the topic ideas, but if you don't need to do something over and over again, then it doesn't need to be part of your workload, right? So instead of creating new decks all the time, I have pretty much a deck. There's a couple of things that I like to do different depending on the date and things like that. So, there was some small modifications, right, to basically just creating a new deck, a new worksheet for myself. So I had a clean slate for every event, right? So we would do some basic writing. That's something that can easily be done by another member of our team. So, Emily can come in, our marketing manager, and Emily can write that lander. Set up registration pages, right? Like, that's not my unique genius. I can have somebody else set up landing pages, right? So again, Emily comes in, sets up those pages, right? Update integrations. That's something that maybe, Grady on my team can do. And that means integrations between like the different, we created a new webinar. We need to make sure that ClickFunnels updates. There's writing emails and writing social and writing ads. We've got a content team that's going to do some of this stuff, plus my marketing manager. Schedule emails. That's all marketing manager work. So we're going to make sure we have an SOP for Emily to do that. We've got publish ads. That's my ad team over at Attention Seekers. Right? Now what's going to happen is this. There are different team members that need to know about different things. For example, my ads team is not Emily. My content team is not Emily. Grady is not Emily. And so what we do is in our SOP, we say, hey, when there's a triggering event, like adding a webinar to a schedule, let's make sure that Emily cascades that message down to the people that are important, right? And that can happen either through a manual message that somebody sends from one team member to the other, or that can happen through those little automations through Zapier. So for example, let's say I've got a Zap that's literally listening to my calendar, and anytime it sees the word agency growth webinar, it knows to trigger an automatic email that says, hey team, Looks like Emily just scheduled a new webinar, right? So we can leverage automation to work to trigger some of these workflows so that you're not having to manually send emails to tell people that you've got another webinar coming up. Now, if every time your webinars are different, with a brand new deck, a brand new hook, a brand new benefits points, then all of this stuff becomes really, really difficult to manage as a system, right? So we have to lock it down, we have to stop innovating, and we have to start to manage the systems that we know work, right? Partner outreach could be done by maybe somebody else on our team, maybe Amber's gonna do that. And then here we go, deliver webinar. The first thing that truly is me in this whole system. Right? And then finally, we're finishing this off with updating a scorecard. My VA Grady is more than capable of doing that. And this is the only thing that I have to do. And so this piece right here, deliver webinar, 1 hour, right? And then what I've done is I've gotten 8 to 10 hours off of my plate, either through elimination or delegating, something like 7 to 8 hours of that work. So 7 to 8 hours is other people, and that 1 hour is me. So this is basically, through automation and delegation, we take a system that works. It's taking me about 8 hours per webinar. And yeah, doing 4 webinars a month sounds really awful if we're in a situation like that, right? Instead, in this situation now, I've got a webinar taking me 1 hour, which means that I can do 2 webinars a month, 3 webinars a month, 4 webinars a month. Last year when things got crazy, I think there was 1 week where I did 7 webinars because, again, we were getting people were asking me to do webinars from some of our strategic partners and things like that. So we want to be able to automate what we can, and we want to delegate the rest, okay? Using those tools, using workflows, using documentation, okay? Hey, real quick, we're hanging out on Cloudways platform today. I've got 2 more key points. We're gonna finish strong on today's webinar, but if you guys are interested to learn more about Cloudways, they are in the pre-launch stage of the agency partner program, agency partnership program. So if you're a digital agency, if you are a marketing agency, and you're doing hosting as a part of your business, and you're currently using Cloudways, or you're considering using Cloudways, what I wanna do is I wanna invite you to the agency partner program waitlist. They're doing some really great things for agencies around cloud and managed hosting. So if you're currently offering hosting, if you're currently using Cloudways infrastructure and you're an agency, you're gonna want to sign up for the agency partner program, okay? You can go to cloudways.com/agency. I'm just gonna put this into chat. So go to cloudways.com/agency, sign up on the wait list. People that sign up for the agency partnership program, they're gonna get special support, basically agency level support. They're gonna get specific discounts, specific exclusive features and benefits just for agency owners. I've been doing some live coaching with the agency owners in the agency partnership program. It's been a lot of fun. There's a ton of work that has gone into this program. So if this is something that you're interested in accessing that special pricing and those discounts and incentives for agency customers, check out cloudways.com/agency, sign up for that wait list if you're looking for those types of features and benefits. So again, Cloudways makes it possible for us to have this platform to teach you about how to grow your agency. So I encourage you to check that out. We've got 2 more key takeaways for you guys today before we close out. All right, back to our program. Number 4, we're gonna pull 2x levers with our lead engines, okay? What I mean by that is this. Let's say, for instance, I'm doing 1 webinar a month, and every time I do that webinar, I generate 3 to 5 leads. Well, instead of going off and investing time in other lead engines, like trying to get on social media or trying to do partnerships or go to events or all those kinds of things. Like, you've got this thing that's working. So what I want to inspire you to do is to start making some calculated bets, around your webinar as a system. And I want you to be thinking about 2s when it comes to this. So let me give you an example. You're running 1 webinar a month. Every time you run the webinar, you get 3 to 5 leads. What I want to challenge you to do is, without adding any more content, without creating new content for your webinar, all I want you to do is go from 1 webinar a month to 2 webinars a month. Now, you might say to yourself, well, gosh, I'm going to be inviting the same small list of people to the exact same webinar twice a month. And yes, that is very true. You might send twice as many invites out to your webinar and you might get less results, or you might get slightly more results. But here becomes the challenge. All right, now I'm doing twice as many webinars a month. What would I need to do to be able to invite twice as many people to my webinar? Let's say you've been an agency for a while and you have an email list of 500 people. What would it take for me to get an email list from 500 to 1,000 people so that every 2 weeks I can send out my invites to 1,000 people instead of 500 people? And start brainstorming ideas. And again, I'm not telling you that I have some silver bullet for you. Maybe it means paying for some traffic to some lead magnets so that you can grow your email list in service of your webinar. Not so you can try to create some cool lead magnet funnel that's going to also get you appointments, but simply so you can deliver value and send twice as many invites. And then we're going to look at those numbers and see how it goes. Maybe we're going to go and ask other people that are in the industry that I'm in if they could also promote the webinar for me, right? So go run your exact same webinar. And instead of you being the only person that's going to promote it, try to find 2 or 3 friends or strategic partners that can promote that webinar with you. So all of a sudden you've got your list. Now you've got other people's lists. Now there are things that you can do to kind of hack that and make that worthwhile. Like for instance, you could invite those strategic partners to come on to your webinar. So you've got your core content, you've got your 30 minutes of pizzazz and wow and value. And then maybe at the beginning of that webinar, you've got your guest and you have them talk about why your topic is so important for their audience. So now you're helping to build up their brand while also you're potentially 2 or 3xing the amount of people that are being invited to that webinar. Now you might think, well, gosh, Brent, I did that. I went out there and it was awesome. I had more people coming to my webinar, but now it's the next month and you're asking me to do yet another webinar. Well, guess what? Maybe you need more strategic partners. Maybe your 2 or 3 close buddies that you've been, cultivating over the last couple of years with great business relationships, you need to start investing to grow that list of strategic partners. So you're going to go out to your niche. You're going to Google, your niche space blog, your niche space influencer, your niche space associations, and you're going to find other people in your market that have lists of your ideal customers. Maybe it's SaaS companies, maybe it's other agencies, maybe it's thought leaders in your space, and you're going to build relationships with them. Not because building relationships with influencers is cool, but because you want to invite them to your next webinar. You want to create a machine that it becomes more and more difficult to some level to continue to grow and scale. And you're going to have to come up with new ideas, not to spread your marketing engine thin, but to get more people to your webinar. So this is what it means to pull 2x levers. And what we're also going to look at is we're going to look at our entire marketing engine. Okay. So in our last session, we walked through in great detail the marketing engine planner. It looked something like this. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at every step of this engine. And we did this live with a couple agencies and it was super cool. But we're going to look at every step of this engine from fueling our engine to building awareness in our engine to driving our engine. And what we're going to do is on every level of this engine, we're going to try to 2x. We're just going to start saying, hey, how could we're getting 100 people to our webinar, or we're getting 100 people to register for a webinar and 25 of them are showing up. Could we do something that gets 50 of them to show up? Could we try to reach out to them personally? Could we change our email series? Hey, we got 30 people to show up, but we only get 5 people to actually apply for an appointment. How could we get 10? Right? So we want to look at 2x levers all along the path. And it doesn't mean that you have to go and look at 2x levers like every part of your system every time. Every time you have a marketing rep, we're just looking at those 2x levers. Okay. So we want to pull those 2x levers for our business. And we want to continue doing that time and time again until we find the ceiling. And the ceiling means when you've invested your energy into your marketing engines and you've pulled 2x lever after 2x lever after 2x lever, like you've literally done everything that you can to promote your webinar and you found the ceiling. For me, that was investing $10,000 in ads twice a month to promote the same webinar. At that point, when we started investing $15,000 per webinar twice a month, we actually did not get better results. We found that we were burning out on our list. We were running out of people to advertise to within our niche on Facebook. And so then it became about how do we move on and look at some other engines in our business, like our nurture engine. So we promote every webinar we do with about $10,000 in paid traffic, right? Because we obsessed about those KPIs. The first webinar we did, we promoted with like $500 in traffic, but over a course course of a couple of years, we got up to the point where we were comfortable spending $10,000 per webinar, right? We obsessed about those KPIs. We used strategic partners and paid traffic. We looked at all the email series, right? We put so much energy into getting more and more qualified leads out of our webinars. We found the ceiling by obsessing with those KPIs. So Andrew Carnegie says, put all your eggs in one basket and then watch the basket, right? People are scared to put all their eggs in one quote unquote marketing channel. But the reality is those that do are the ones that get the great results. They put all of their marketing energy in one channel and they watch that basket. They obsess about that basket. So for me, I obsess over the numbers. Like this is our numbers for some of our ad spends around one of our engines with our Facebook group, right? We've got group members, we've got how many people we're reaching out to and how many conversations we're having. And this is a dashboard we look at every single week, if not every single day. On our all hands scorecard, we're looking at how many applications did we get every single week in our business? How much did we spend on ads? How much revenue did we book? How many strategy calls? We become obsessed with those numbers. Okay, so I invest in very few marketing channels. There are some channels that we are just straight up not good at, and I am very okay with that, but we obsess about these channels, and that's what creates $1 million plus business, right? We obsess about those channels. We know exactly where we get our leads, and those are scaled channels in order to create that kind of revenue. So here we go. We're going to recap today a few different concepts, and I'm going to help you finish with some very, very clear next steps around your marketing engine. So your scaling system. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about a couple of ideas today as we close around next steps. So how do we scale our system? The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to systematize. Okay. We're going to think in systems, not in experiments. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to unpack that activity, right? We've proven that we've got a marketing engine. We're going to unpack all the things that we're doing. We're going to then organize those into steps/SOPs. We're also going to build a scorecard, right? That's going to tell us how we're doing with our engine. Sorry, I didn't have that up on full screen there. So we're going to systematize, we're going to unpack, we're going to organize those steps, we're going to build out our scorecard. So systematizing is the first step that you're going to do along the way. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to try to automate or eliminate as much as we can. And that first step around automation is we're going to simplify. That once you realize that you're going to try to automate something, you're going to realize there's probably some things that you're doing that need to be simplified a little bit, right? Like when I would send the email to my team about the podcast, a lot of times I'd write little personal messages in there about, topics that came from the show, things like that. And I had to realize, hey, this is going to be kind of all about business, and I'm going to have to find another place for that. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to pick the right tools for the right job. It's really important for you to first get clear on your system. Don't just go to Zapier and be like, oh man, there's all these cool things I can do, right? We want to work through that elevate your workload sheet and look at everything that's actually happening. And then we want to pick the right tool for the right job. People ask me all the time, should I sign up for ActiveCampaign? Should I sign up for this or that cool tool? And I'm like, I don't know. What's your marketing engine? What are you actually doing to get leads? Is there value in you having an automation tool around that? The third thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the workflows, not just the steps, but the handoffs in between each of the steps. Because a lot of times there's some minutia, there's some small stuff like, oh, when I finish this task, I have to then notify this person. And a lot of times those workflows are where bottlenecks get created. Somebody wrote the blog post, but they forgot to send it to the publisher. Somebody got a blog post published, but they forgot to tell their social media person that the blog post was published. And so that person could go out there and actually promote it, right? Because a lot of humans are involved in those little handoffs. And if every time you have a marketing awareness event, there's like 15 handoffs, that literally, if you're doing one marketing event a day in some way, right? That's 15 little minutia things that can basically create a lot of overhead, but it also creates a lot of room for you dropping the ball, getting busy and overwhelmed and stuff like that. The third step is delegate. Delegation is just about as good as automation because it's getting off of your plate and onto somebody else's. So in order to do that, first we need to be clear about who's accountable for what, right? In our business, we have this thing called an accountability chart, and we make sure that each seat in our business is really clear with what they're doing. Hey, we've got this email list. We want to send out 3 emails to our email list every single week. So you're the person that's accountable to sending those 3 emails out every week. No matter what happens, we want you to send those 3 emails, right? So we want to be clear on what has to be done for these engines to work. We need to be clear on what's accountable, right? The second is we're going to organize those accountabilities into seats. Doesn't mean it's a full-time seat. I have seats in my business where we have people working 1 hour a week to 2 hours a week to 5 hours a month. But we're going to get clear on what those seats are so that somebody can actually sit in the seat and take over those things that you're currently doing, and somebody else can be accountable for those. And then finally, we're going to LMA. And this is a concept pulled from my friends over at EOS, but we're going to lead, we're going to manage, and we're going to hold accountable. And a scorecard is a great tool to do that. So we already have our scorecard set up. So example would be, hey, we're sending 3 emails to our list every week. So let's make sure on our scorecard it says how many emails did we send for that week, and I have a team member that I can check in on. I can just look at my scorecard and see, hey, we sent 3 emails and we got this many strategy calls. If emails sent were 2, it gives me a really good indicator that I need to check in with that team member, right? So we can use our scorecard to lead, manage, and hold accountable. And here's the reality. No matter how savvy your marketing system is, no matter how good you are at what you do, there's a chance that your marketing engine is going to vary in the results that it gets over time. Maybe right now it's blowing up and your webinars are super hot, but maybe there's a time where your webinars are doing great. Your webinars are doing great, you're going up and up, and then all of a sudden, results start to tank. Well, that's where the leading, managing, and holding accountable comes into play, right? Yes, you can autopilot a lot of your business. Yes, you can step out of being in the weeds, but you still got to keep your finger on the pulse. We do that through our scorecard. We do that through checking in with the team members that are managing the engine to make sure that we never enter a situation where something goes down, down, down forever, but maybe there's going to be a little bit of a blip, and then it's going to take back off again because you're going to be managing that marketing engine. So depending on the season, depending on what's going on, depending on a lot of different factors, some of your engines are going to perform for months or years, and then they're going to potentially see some turbulence. And so you can't totally set and forget it, but that leading, managing, and holding accountable is really where the magic happens on that. So this is your action plan. Systematize, automate, delegate. We're going to do that through unpacking, organizing, and scorecarding, simplifying, getting our tools, our workflows, and finally, we're going to do that through delegation, accountability, seats, and leading, managing, and holding people. Accountability chart, accountabilities, and then seats, and then lead, manage, and hold accountable. So that is our action plan for scaling our engines. If you guys do that, I promise you, you're going to see your engines take off. You're going to totally change your conceptions about marketing and what it takes to grow consistent leads for your digital agency. Love to close out here today. What's been your biggest takeaway from this masterclass? In our first session, we talked about what engines are, how to build them, why they're important. We built some live engines with you with some digital marketing agencies. And then today we really dug into automating and scaling our engines. How do we delegate things off of our plate so you can run your marketing engines with as little as 1 hour per week, and you can get those consistent leads over time, keep you booked with a wait list so that you can grow your business, impact more of your amazing customers, and achieve freedom in your business and life. So I hope you've been able to take a moment to think about how to apply these concepts to your own business. I hope you've got some key points and nuggets that are going to help you in becoming successful. Thanks a ton for being here as a part of our masterclass series. As I mentioned earlier, I want to call final attention to our great platform of Cloudways. Without them, this session wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't be able to teach you all this stuff about getting more leads for your digital agency. So check out their agency partner program. That's at cloudways.com/agency, or I'll put that full URL into chat. So check them out, sign up, get on the wait list, discount pricing, pricing incentives, exclusive support levels because agencies operate differently. And I know from running one for 13 years myself, sometimes you just need different types of support for for your business to make that happen, and also some exclusive agency owner benefits. So Cloudways has put a ton of energy and time into designing this agency partner program. They've talked to tons of agencies, both some of the top customers, but also some agencies out there in the space, and said, hey, what do you want to make a better cloud hosting platform? How can we make this better work for agency owners? And they custom tailor this entire system around that. So if you've enjoyed today's program, if you want more exclusive content like this, sign up for that agency partner program. Whether you're currently working with Cloudways or you're considering them as a hosting platform, I definitely encourage you to do that. You won't regret it. Cloudways.com/agency. All right. That is our presentation for today. Thanks for hanging out with us for our agency breakthrough masterclass, Get More Leads. I've had a really great time presenting this content. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to me, Brent@ugurus.com. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, I'm Brent Weaver.